Imagine a dusty, sun-baked expanse in the Libyan desert, July 1942. A lone American-made Willys Jeep, meant for light scouting and carrying a handful of soldiers, defies every expectation. It's overloaded with machine guns, fuel cans and ammo crates, groaning under twice its intended weight as it speeds across endless sands. But here's the shocking truth. This makeshift monster, crewed by just a few daring men, would soon obliterate hundreds of enemy planes, not in epic dogfights but right on the ground, outsmarting massive air forces with sheer ingenuity. How could a humble Jeep become a game-changer in World War II, rivaling the destructive power of entire bomber squadrons while barely losing a soul? Stick around because the story of the SAS armed Jeep reveals how a radical idea turned the tide in the North African campaign, and it all started with a desperate need to flip the script on Axis dominance. To grasp the brilliance of this invention, we have to rewind to the brutal realities of the Desert War. By mid-1942, the Axis powers, Germany's Luftwaffe and Italy's Regia Aeronautica, often ruled the skies over North Africa. Their Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers terrorized British supply lines, plunging from above with pinpoint accuracy to shatter convoys and morale alike. Meanwhile, sleek Messerschmitt Bf 109 fighters outmatched RAF pilots, claiming air superiority in key battles. The toll was staggering. For every Axis plane the Allies downed, they paid dearly in lost aircraft, precious fuel and irreplaceable lives. Britain's resources were stretched thin, with replacements slow to arrive across vast oceans. Traditional countermeasures like high-altitude bombing runs on enemy airfields proved frustratingly ineffective. Desert airstrips were sprawling, with planes scattered over miles of flat sand, making them elusive targets from 10,000 feet. The raids consumed enormous fuel and risked heavy losses for minimal gains, sometimes destroying just a handful of aircraft per mission. Enter Lieutenant David Stirling, a tall, unyielding Scots Guards officer sidelined by a parachute injury in 1941. While recovering, he dreamed up a bold alternative. Why not send small elite teams deep behind enemy lines to sabotage planes up close? No massive air fleets needed, just stealthy operatives planting explosives under the cover of night. Stirling pitched his vision to General Claude Auchinleck, the Middle East Commander-in-Chief, and won approval to form L Detachment, Special Air Service Brigade. The name was a clever ruse, part of a deception to convince Axis spies that a full parachute brigade lurked in Egypt. He recruited about 65 tough volunteers, mostly from disbanded commando units, and set up camp at Kabret, south of Cairo. Their debut, Operation Squadron on November 16, 1941, was a harsh lesson. 55 men parachuted toward airfields at Gazala and Tamimi amid Operation Crusader, but a ferocious sandstorm, the worst in decades, scattered them. Gear vanished in the winds, charges got drenched, and navigation became impossible. Only 21 survivors staggered back, with no planes destroyed and over 60% of the force lost. A grim report deemed further parachute drops too risky in the unpredictable desert. Yet, from this failure sprang innovation. The remnants linked up with the Long-Range Desert Group (LRDG), experts in deep reconnaissance using modified trucks. LRDG's Captain David Lloyd Owen suggested ditching parachutes for ground transport, offering to ferry SAS teams right to the targets. Stirling seized the opportunity. Within weeks, vehicle-delivered raids transformed the unit's fortunes. On December 14, 1941, Lieutenant Paddy Mayne commanded 6 men against Tamat Airfield. Armed with the ingenious Lewis bomb, invented by Lieutenant Jacques Lewis, this compact device packed plastic explosive, thermite, and diesel into a 1-pound package, ignited by a timed fuse. Placed on wings or in cockpits, it blasted holes and sparked infernos in fuel tanks. Mayne's team slipped in, set their charges, and escaped as 24 Axis planes erupted in flames, no SAS losses. The success snowballed. Mayne struck Tamat again on December 27, claiming 27 more. Lieutenant Bill Fraser's group hit Ajdabiya, destroying up to 25. By June 1942, Stirling himself raided Bagish near Benghazi, a vital repair hub, wiping out 37 aircraft. These early triumphs relied on the Lewis bomb's deadly efficiency, but tragedy struck when Jacques Lewis died in a strafing attack on December 30, 1941. As the SAS key trainer and bomb expert, his loss was profound. Stirling later credited him as the true architect of their methods. Others mastered the formula, keeping the raids alive. One legendary tale from Mayne's second Tamat strike highlights their grit. Short on bombs, they smashed instrument panels on 10 planes by hand, or perhaps with tools, ensuring those birds never flew again. Mayne, a towering former rugby star, embodied the raw determination that defined the SAS. As Axis defenses tightened, sentries on planes, floodlights and machine gun nests, the need for evolution grew. Stealthy foot approaches risked close-quarters confrontations, slowing operations and raising dangers. The SAS craved a faster, fiercer tool, something to blitz through with overwhelming firepower from afar. That spark led to the armed Jeep, a mobile powerhouse that would redefine special operations. The moment the SAS realized silent night raids were losing their edge, they didn't retreat, they reinvented the playbook. By July 1942, the first batch of specially modified Willys MB Jeeps arrived. These weren't ordinary scout vehicles anymore. They became rolling arsenals designed for one purpose: to storm enemy airfields at speed, unleash devastating firepower, and vanish into the desert before organized resistance could form. What the designers in Detroit never imagined, a handful of British Special Forces soldiers turned into a nightmare for the Axis Air Forces. The base Willys Jeep was already tough, 60 horsepower, four-wheel drive, a lightweight frame built to handle rough terrain. But the SAS pushed it far beyond factory limits. They stripped away anything that could slow them down or give them away. Windshields came off to kill sun glare that could flash for miles, radiator grills were cut wide open so the engine wouldn't overheat in 50 degrees Celsius desert furnace. Then came the real transformation. 5 Vickers K machine guns, originally aircraft defensive weapons, were bolted onto improvised steel frames. These gas-operated guns fired .303 rounds at a blistering 950 to 1,200 rounds per minute, 3 times the rate of a standard Bren. Each fed from large 100-round drum magazines, allowing gunners to pour dozens of incendiary and tracer bullets into parked planes in seconds. A typical SAS Raider Jeep carried twin Vickers KS on a swivel mount beside the front passenger, another pair covering the rear arc, and sometimes a single gun near the driver. A few vehicles even mounted a heavy .50 caliber Browning for punching through light armor or vehicles that tried to block their escape. Ammunition drums, sand channels, camouflage netting, and up to 12 extra jerry cans of fuel and water were lashed everywhere possible. The springs flattened under the load. The chassis creaked. Fully equipped, the Jeep weighed between 3,800 and 4,200 pounds, almost double its design capacity. Yet it still moved fast. Navigation relied on the Bagnalled Sun Compass, a brilliantly simple device that used the sun's shadow to give true bearings even when magnetic compasses failed near metal and engines. Water condensers recycled radiator steam back into the cooling system because in the deep desert, even engine water was precious. Every modification served one goal: reach deep, strike hard, survive long enough to get out. The first true test of this overloaded beast came on the night of July 26, 1942, at Sidi Hainish Airfield. 18 Jeeps, carrying roughly 60 SAS men, crossed 50 miles of open sand in total darkness, guided only by starlight, celestial fixes and Mike Sadler's uncanny navigation. As they closed on the perimeter, a Luftwaffe bomber unexpectedly landed, switching on runway lights. The glow silhouetted every parked aircraft perfectly. David Stirling fired a green flare. The column split into 2 lines in a classic V formation and charged. What followed was 15 minutes of controlled chaos. Tracers ripped through the night. Incendiary rounds ignited fuel tanks. Ju-87 Stukas, Ju-52 transports, and Bf-109 fighters erupted into fireballs one after another. The Jeeps weaved between rows at speed, gunners switching drums with practice speed. According to the SAS War Diary, 37 aircraft were destroyed that night. The entire assault cost the SAS 1 man killed during the raid itself. Lance Bombardier John Robson cut down at his guns, and another lost the next day to a Stuka attack during withdrawal. 15 of the 18 Jeeps returned. Think about that number for a second. 18 overloaded Jeeps, 4 men each, no air support, no artillery, achieved in 15 minutes what a full-scale RAF bombing raid often failed to do after burning far more fuel and risking entire squadrons. The cost-effectiveness was staggering. A single Luftwaffe fighter cost vastly more to produce, arm, fuel, and train a pilot for than one Jeep and its 4-man crew. Yet one night's work could erase multiple fighters forever. The raids kept coming. At Bur el Qusir, Jeeps finished what Lewis bombs started, claiming mid-30s kills. At El Daba, Paddy Mayne's convoy destroyed 14 aircraft despite heavier German sentries and wire. Each operation proved the same truth: speed and concentrated automatic fire could overwhelm airfield defenses faster than guards could react. The Desert War had just gained a new apex predator, and it rode on 4 wheels. The armed Jeep raids didn't just destroy planes. They forced the Axis to rethink their entire rear area defense. By late 1942, German and Italian commanders were diverting entire infantry companies to guard airfields that previously needed only a single sentry with a flashlight. Mobile patrols, anti-vehicle ditches, floodlights, and sandbag machine gun nests sprang up around every strip. Every extra guard, every extra light, every extra gun pulled men and resources away from the front line where Rommel desperately needed them. The SS didn't have to win every raid to win the war of attrition. Simply existing as a constant, unpredictable threat multiplied their impact far beyond the burning wrecks they left behind. The numbers tell a story of ruthless efficiency. Conservative post-war estimates, cross-checked against Axis records, suggest the SAS accounted for between 250 and 370 Axis aircraft destroyed on the ground during the North African campaign, most of them by Jeep-mounted guns and Lewis bombs combined. Paddy, Mayne alone is credited with direct or partial responsibility for 100 to 130 aircraft, more than many decorated RAF fighter aces achieved in air-to-air combat. A single Jeep crew in a few furious minutes could erase planes that cost Germany many times more to produce, fuel and crew than the Jeep itself ever did. Replacing trained pilots proved even harder than replacing machines. That lopsided exchange rate made the armed Jeep one of the most devastatingly cost-effective weapons platforms of the entire Desert War. David Stirling's personal run ended in January 1943 when he was captured during a raid in southern Tunisia. The Germans dubbed him the Phantom Major, a nickname that reflected both fear and grudging respect. Paddy, Mayne took command and kept the momentum alive, leading Jeep columns through the final push across North Africa and later into Europe. After D-Day, SS Jeeps operated behind German lines in France, striking fuel depots, rail yards, and airfields with the same ruthless speed they had perfected in the sand. The concept never died. When the SAS reformed in the 1950s for the Malayan emergency, the armed Land Rover took over from the Willys Jeep. By the late 1960s, the famous Pink Panthers, pale pink Series 2A Land Rovers fitted with heavy machine guns, massive fuel tanks and sand recovery gear, carried the same philosophy into the deserts of Oman and beyond. 72 were built, and they served right through to the 1991 Gulf War. Today's British Special Forces still operate on the same core idea with vehicles like the Supercat Jackal. Extreme mobility, concentrated firepower, long autonomous range and minimal armor. Every design choice traces straight back to those overloaded, spring-sagging Jeeps tearing across the Libyan desert in 1942. No other nation during World War II developed anything close. German Brandenburgers used light cars and trucks for infiltration and deception, not direct vehicle assault. American and Soviet Special Operations doctrine never embraced the idea of driving machine gun platforms straight onto enemy airfields. The SAS armed Jeep was a uniquely British answer to a uniquely desperate problem, turning borrowed American vehicles, obsolete aircraft guns and pure audacity into a weapon system that punched far above its weight. For men, 5 guns. 1 overloaded Jeep. In the factory it was never meant to carry any of it. In the desert it became legendary. It didn't just destroy planes. It proved that imagination, speed and raw aggression could rewrite the rules of war, and force an empire to spend millions defending what it could never afford to lose. Thanks for watching this deep dive into one of the most ingenious chapters of World War II. If this story of British Special Forces innovation hit the mark, hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite detail, and subscribe for more untold stories from history's sharpest edges. See you in the next one.